JJ, today is Friday, January 14th. Welcome to Breakdown.
Welcome.
You ready to break it down?
I'm welcome to recap the end of the college football season.
Let's do it.
All right.
Okay, JJ, the college football season ended. Our national champions, Georgia Bulldogs, defeated Alabama Crimson Tide.
Just like I predicted, right?
We both missed that one on that. You know what? I thought because I thought that Alabama had the better quarterback, and that's why I went with Alabama, not because of all the other surroundings. But as you say, if anybody's going to be right all the time, they're super duper billionaires. But JJ, what was it that Georgia did? What adjustment did they make from the first time they played Alabama in the SEC championship game to win in the national championship game?
They did a few things differently.
Okay.
Well, I would say they were able to stifle Alabama's run game. Alabama rushed for I think 130 yards in the first game and 30 in the second game, and 1.1 yard per carry.
Wow.
That was a big deal. They won the turnover battle in the SEC championship game. Georgia gave up the ball twice, and Alabama didn't at all, and that was obviously different in the national championship game.
Mm-hmm.
Their pass rush was more of a presence. They had 0 sacks against Alabama in the SEC championship game, and they had 4 in the title game. They had 5 tackles for loss in the SEC championship game, and they doubled that in the title game.
Wow.
So that was what they did. But for the most part, I said the biggest adjustment was they didn't have to account for John Mechie III or Jameson Williams.
Because Michi was injured.
Mechie tore his ACL in the SEC championship game, and then Jameson Williams tore his ACL in the national championship game.
That's tough. That's tough.
It's tough when your 2 best receivers go down like that.
Yeah. Well, JJ, when Alabama had the ball, who was the best player on the field?
It was debatable. I mean, it depends on how you view it, but it was either Bryce Young or the sophomore tight end Cameron Latu.
What about the Georgia defense? Anyone on? I mean, I'm saying when Alabama had the ball, that means Alabama's offense was on the field, and Georgia's defense was on the field.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Will Anderson. I mean, they had their front 7 was dominant. I told you about the 4 sacks and the pass rush that they had. I thought you just meant Alabama's offense. Okay.
No, yeah, and you know what? I kind of agree. When I don't think it could be given to one single person, because I think the Georgia defense, their front 7, was by far the best unit on the field when Alabama had the ball. But at the same, turning it around, when Georgia had the ball, who was the best player on the field?
I have no idea. I mean, that was Alabama wasn't dominant. They didn't assert their will on Georgia's, so I'm not going to pick a defensive player for Alabama. And there's almost no offensive players from Georgia to pick.
You wouldn't go with Stetson.
I mean, by default, you might have to do that. George Pickens had like 1 catch for I think 40 yards. Or no, he had 1 catch for 50-some yards, and then Brock Bowers had even less yards receiving. James Cook had like 70 yards rushing, same thing with Zamir White. So it was a very balanced offense, but Stetson Bennett, I mean, he threw for 244 yards. He had 2 touchdowns, no picks, just that 1 fumble. Or he fumbled twice, just that 1 lost fumble, which led to a touchdown. But yeah,
Okay.
it was a very, very balanced offense, I'd say, from Georgia.
Okay. Well, obviously, to me, Georgia's defense was superb.
Who do you think was the best player on the field when Georgia had the ball?
By default, I'd go with the quarterback.
Yeah.
Bennett. Yeah, I mean, he had the ball every every play, and they won the game, and they scored the points.
They did, and he didn't kill them. In the first half, it looked like they should have went to JT Daniels or something, but that was a war of attrition in the first half. But it opened up a little bit in the second.
Okay. JJ, for Alabama, I mentioned Georgia's defense being really great. What was the biggest problem for Alabama? Was it Georgia's speed or was it their size?
I would say before Jamison Williams tore his ACL, I would say Georgia's size was the biggest issue, but after Jamison Williams tore his ACL, at that point in time, it became Georgia's speed.
Okay. Uh, Georgia's size and their speed is really impressive to me. I mean, they're big, they're fast. Uh, Georgia's defense, how does their defense compare to other great defenses?
It's really hard to tell just because of the sample size of the teams that they played against. I don't think that they didn't play a team ranked higher than 22 in the college football playoff until the SEC championship game, and then that defense gave up 41 points. And then when they met again in the title game, Alabama was without its two best playmakers on the outside, so it's hard to compare.
Okay, so you're saying this a small sample size based on elite offenses, but I'm talking about a sample size based on 14 games.
Yeah.
I mean, I was very much impressed with their defense the whole season long.
I mean, they looked dominant against Michigan. Like they in no way let Michigan's outside players get to the edge at all. And
they looked dominant against Alabama.
yeah, but Alabama was missing its two best receivers. I think that's a significant.
True,
That's
true.
significant. So I think that
But through the whole season, there were less.
they did not look super dominant the first time they played Alabama.
True. They had they had 1.5 game where they did not look super dominant to me, and like you said, that first game. But through the whole season, no one was scoring 20 points against Alabama. I mean, against Georgia. Georgia was dominating defensively.
Yeah, but I think Cincinnati had like a better strength of schedule than Georgia did.
I don't know. I definitely would not go that way.
Well, no, I mean like the computer numbers had that's not like that's an objective outcome.
Who did Cincinnati play?
Notre Dame.
Okay.
I don't know, Indiana. Like they played Houston. I mean, who did before the SEC championship game? Who did Georgia play?
They played Arkansas.
Okay.
They played Kentucky.
Okay.
They played. Who did they? They played Clemson.
Oh, okay. Okay. They played to the 2022 iteration.
Those were better teams than Cincinnati played.
I don't think so. I don't agree.
Who was better?
Houston was better. I mean, Notre Dame was obviously better than any of those teams, but Houston was at least as good as Kentucky and Arkansas and Clemson.
Okay.
I'm sorry to say.
Well, JJ. Okay. Well, the bottom line is Georgia is the national champion this
For
year.
the first time in 41 years.
If there were a third game this year between Georgia and Alabama, who would win it?
I mean, I think that I would definitely pick Georgia to win. Alabama has went through it with the injury issues, and so I would have to by default say that Georgia would win.
Okay.
I will say I had underrated Georgia a lot this year, and Stetson Bennett in particular. I think in just college pass rating, Bryce Young was 4th in the nation, and Stetson Bennett was one spot ahead of him, 3rd in the nation. So he definitely outplayed what I thought he was as a game manager, and he was much better than Cade McNamara against Michigan. So I will say that I did have a propensity to underrate Stetson Bennett, but I think Georgia is far and away the best team in the country, but as it pertains to them being like an all-time team or like a great defense, I think that they're more of a product of their environment and their the down college football year.
Well, okay, JJ. Enough of this Alabama versus Georgia. The one thing about the championship game, it pitted two SEC teams against SEC. They were both, an SEC team against an SEC team. Talk about the SEC dominance in football in this century.
Yeah.
Is it true that it just means more?
Yeah, I would say it means more. I would say college football means more to the SEC than it does to any other conference, just by virtue of like the history of of sports, professional sports, and like the priorities that they have. I know down south they latch on. People latch onto their colleges more so than they do their pro teams a lot. A lot of times because the pro teams didn't come until much later.
Okay, that's true.
In the north, like all of the NFL and NBA teams, for the most part, migrated south after establishing their roots in the north, and I think that's one of the reasons why down south they have more of affinity for their college teams.
Well, JJ, in this century, the 21st century, there has been 22 national champions in football. 13 of them come from the SEC. 13 of the 22. The next closest one is the ACC with 4. The Big Ten has 2, the Big 12 has 2, and the Pac-12 has 1. Is that going to continue on that trend for forever? I mean, when will it start meaning more in the Pac-12 or in the Big Ten or the ACC or the Big 12?
I mean, if you look at like the college football like ratings and like who's watching football and everything like that, I mean that's concentrated in the southern part of the country. So, it might not ever mean more. I mean, obviously the Pac-12 prioritizes academics a lot more, and same thing with the Big Ten. And then in the Pac-12, like they prioritize other sports as well. So, I think they're more interested in being well-rounded than just focusing on the revenue sports, which seems like the SEC has been doing.
Okay, well, as I said, of the 22 champions in the 21st century, 13 of the winners come from the SEC, and 6 of the runner-ups have come from the SEC. I mean, to me, that's total dominance. Why is the SEC so dominant?
Well, in 2011, Andy Staples of SI did a research study on trying to figure out where NFL players come from.
Okay.
And he did it by position breakdown, and he found that 43% of the defensive linemen come from, I think, like the 7 to 8 most obese states in the country. For good purpose. I mean, you have to have.
Okay,
you have to have big
okay, go ahead.
And can you guess what those states are?
I would guess Michigan would be one.
No.
Really? I see.
I
know a lot of big people in Michigan.
Yeah, but there's a lot of by percentage. You're gonna have to go south.
So I'm gonna guess. Okay, you said go south.
Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, Arkansas, Florida, and Kentucky.
Hey, is it a sea in the light pool?
I mean, they did an overlay of the map of the players.
Okay, it's more than just football. Is more than just size.
It is, but I do think that football is won at the line of scrimmage, and all of the other skill position players, Ohio State, Michigan, they can compete with the skill position players, but when you can't compete at the line of scrimmage, it's very difficult. So,
there's speed too, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna buy into it that just the obese states produce the best football player.
No, I think they produce the best defensive and offensive linemen.
Okay. Wisconsin been known for their offensive linemen.
Well, they're offensive linemen, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Outside of J.J. Watt and T.J. Watt, not as much.
And they were known for big offensive linemen. Talk about recruiting, JJ. And just because you come from a southern state, that doesn't mean you got to play football in that southern state. Talk about recruiting. Where are all the SEC, the recruiting, the early signing period? The SEC ripped it up in recruiting. Up to 24, the top 24 recruiting teams rated by 24/7. SEC had half of them.
Yeah.
So that leads you to think that the SEC is going to continue to be dominant.
Yeah, and another thing that will lead you to that conclusion is if you look at the actual players that were highly rated in 24/7's aggregate rankings, a disproportionate amount of them came from SEC country, from below the south of the Mason-Dixon line. So, I mean, the population is migrating west and south. But we already know where the West priorities lie, and they don't lie so much in in football, and I do think that the I think the concentration of people migrating south, and I think you know, I think everything is a part. I'm not saying like the obesity map is like the end all be all. It was like well, that's why they win at the line of scrimmage, but I think that that's one aspect. I think you know, prioritizing athletics is another
Okay.
part of it. But
Okay.
I think it's a
Well,
soup.
what about this? The and on some boards he's the number one rated recruit this year, and some boards he's the number two rated recruit. He chose to go to Oregon. I can't even think of his name. He's a
About
defensive.
what person are you talking about? Are you talking about like for the number one rated for the? Are you talking about Kayvon Thibodeau?
Yes,
Okay, okay.
he chose to go to Oregon.
Oh yeah,
And you know what? You know why he said he didn't go to Alabama?
because of the stigmatism.
The stigma attached to an Alabama education.
And then he also said he wanted to align himself with the brand that is Oregon, who wouldn't want to be,
Okay.
or who wouldn't want to align themselves with the Nike brand, which is understandable, especially with NIL. I think Oregon is a team that I mean, if they can stop having their coaches leave for Florida, I think Oregon is a school that has the potential to.
You mentioned the NIL, and it made me think. Uh, will the NIL or will the transfer portal help reduce the dominance that the SEC has?
Um, I don't know. It seems if you look at the transfer portal, a lot of the Southern players want to stay in the South. Like Max Johnson, I think from LSU transferred, but he transferred within the conference. He went to Texas A&M. I think that seems to be happening a lot. There's a lot of players from schools that are transferring to Alabama from SEC schools.
So, JJ, as I listen to you, I'm beginning to feel that the SEC is going to rule college football the rest of my lifetime and maybe even through my future grandchildren's lifetime. I mean,
I mean, maybe, but like if ask people in the '40s if who's gonna rule college football, you'd say like Army and like
okay,
Princeton
true,
and stuff. So
true,
I mean,
true.
I wouldn't
The,
count all those chickens
the,
before they're hatched.
the pendulum is always swinging.
Yeah, I mean, it's been this way ever since Nick Saban's got down here. Let's see what happens in a post Nick Saban world.
Okay, okay. JJ, when it comes to conferences,
Mm-hmm.
it's big better. The SEC currently has 14 teams with two more coming. The ACC has 14 teams. I'm sorry, the ACC currently has 12 teams with no teams in the hopper. The Big Ten currently has 14 teams with no schools in the hopper. The Big 12 has 10 with 4 teams coming and 2 teams leaving. And the Pac 12 has 12 with no schools in the hopper. Is bigger better?
Um, yeah, I mean it can be. I mean I think it just depends on. I don't think it's necessarily the quantity of schools you have. I think it's about the quality of schools that you have.
Okay,
Um,
okay. A couple more things I want to talk about today. Uh, the next thing is, we talked about is bigger, better. There were only two Power Five conferences represented in the playoff, the college playoff this year, and they were the SEC and the Big Ten. I've asked you this question 1,000 times. I'm going to ask it again. When will we get a 12-team playoff?
um, Probably around. It's 2022 right now. I'd say maybe 2028. I think that we're gonna get an 8-team playoff before we get a 12-team playoff, and I think it's gonna have incremental expansions. So
Okay, okay. I just want to go on the record for the next.
what do you think that we're gonna get?
I think we should have had one 2 years ago.
I mean, yeah, but when do you think we're going to get?
When will we get a 12-team playoff? I'll tell you this: if the conferences were smart, we if they are smart, we will get a 12-team playoff for the season 2024. So I mean, the playoff will be played in 2025, but the season will be the 2024 season. That's what I'm saying.
That's what you think will happen.
That's what I'm thinking will happen.
Okay.
Because I think money talks, and I think they're gonna start listening to the money. Oh, JJ, we've talked football. Let's talk your favorite sport, not the NBA version, but the collegiate version.
Fair enough. Just to cap football, I think next year's championship game will be Alabama versus Ohio State. Now let's go on to college basketball.
Let me make mine.
Okay, yes.
Okay, I think it will be Arkansas and Michigan State.
Okay.
Okay. That's right.
You should put all your money, if you think that's going to happen, you should put all the money you want on Vegas. I mean, who needs stocks? You will be rich.
What makes you think I'm not going to do that?
You know what? Maybe you will.
Okay, let's talk basketball, the SEC and the Big Ten. The season is underway. It's been some surprises.
Yeah.
Been some surprises. As we go through this, and each week, JJ, I'm going to ask you this, so you can start preparing yourself for this. I'm going to ask you for your 4 top teams in the SEC and in the Big Ten. I've been pleasantly surprised by some of the schools, and I've been disappointed by some of the schools. Let's just give me your top 4 teams in the SEC first. Give it to me in both SEC and the Big Ten, and then we'll go through them.
Let's start with the SEC.
Okay.
SEC has the presumptive number 1 team in the country if they hold on and win on Saturday, and the Auburn Tigers, who
Wait,
you were.
time out. Auburn is the presumptive number 1 team in the country?
Yeah.
Wow. When did that happen?
When Baylor lost to Texas Tech and then USC lost, and there was no more undefeateds. And you know they have the presumptive number 1 overall pick in the NBA draft as well as Jabari Smith, right?
I did not know he was number 1.
Yeah, like he's the lowest you'll see him ranked is 3. I mean, some people still say Chet Holmgren, some people still say Paolo Banchero, but a lot of momentum is going the way of Jabari, and I'd say more people than not. He has a plurality, if not a majority of people thinking he's going to be the number 1 pick.
So in the SEC, your number 1 team is Auburn.
Yes. After that, I would have to say LSU.
You know what? I'm glad you mentioned them because I definitely want to talk about that when we come back. Yeah, and number 3,
Kentucky, unfortunately.
the Blue Blood.
LSU.
Okay. And number 4.
I think at the end of the year, this might be a different team, but for now, I guess we'll go with Tennessee.
Tennessee. Okay. We're going to come back and talk about these, but let's go to the SEC. Give me 1 through 4 in the SEC.
Well, let's go to the Big Ten since we just did this.
I'm sorry, the Big Ten. But what I want to say is, give it to me in reverse order. Give me number 4 first, and then give me number 3.
Okay. The 4th team in the Big Ten, I would have to say, would be Ohio State.
Ohio State, okay. And number 3?
That would be Wisconsin.
The Badgers.
Maybe the All-American candidate Jordan Davis preseason. Or he might be the Wooden Award winner for all we know.
And number 2?
Number 2 would be MSU, Michigan Spartans, who I saw in person a couple days ago beat Minnesota on a Joey Hauser last-second tip.
Yes, 2-point game. So MSU is number 2. So JJ, number 1 has to be either Illinois or Purdue. I'm surprised I haven't come across those two, the name one of those two schools already.
You know what? I completely blanked out. I forgot about Illinois. Purdue was my number 1.
Well, start over right now. Give me your number 1. No, give me your 1 through 4.
Okay.
You're gonna leave Ohio State out?
No, yeah, Ohio State's gonna get bumped. Sorry.
Okay, let's do it. Give me your 1 through 4.
Purdue, MSU, Illinois,
Okay.
Wisconsin.
Okay.
I completely forgot about Illinois. I don't know how that happened.
Okay, let's talk. Let's start off with you want to do the Big Ten or the SEC? You want to break them down a little more? Which one first?
Hey, it's up to you.
You're more knowledgeable about the Big Ten, so let's go to the SEC first.
Okay, fair.
All right, Tennessee. That's a surprise to me.
Yeah.
I remember a month or so ago, Arkansas was in the top 10 or close to it. and they're not even in your top. They're the third in the top 10 in the nation, and they're not even in your top four in the SEC. What happened?
And they win. They might not be in my top 10, honestly.
Ooh,
I
ooh.
mean that win against Missouri was much needed, but it was their first win. Yeah, Arkansas.
Well, speak of Missouri. Missouri beat Alabama,
Yeah,
and you didn't have Alabama in your top four either.
not as of now. I think that
Missouri,
might change.
Missouri beat Alabama in Arkansas. This is the halftime score. Arkansas, Missouri, 49 to 15.
Yeah.
To 15. It was 13 for a long while. But man, I don't know if I've ever seen a game like that before. But go ahead. You got Tennessee's number four. Tell me about Tennessee. What makes them number four?
I mean, they still have they have a freshman point guard who's going through some growing pains. Kennedy Chandler is dynamic, but he's also a freshman. They've also had some issues with health, not COVID related, but they've had issues getting healthy. But John Fogerson is like a 17th year senior. I mean, he's I guess realistically he's a 6th year senior. He took a COVID year, but he's been there forever. And Tennessee is just they're rock solid. They're reliable. They have their potential one and done lottery pick in Kenny Chandler, but you know
Okay. And Tennessee is a team that I'm going to have to see play a little bit more because I'm not ready to judge them yet. Uh, I might would have Alabama ahead of them. But tell me about Kentucky. They're the blue blood team in right here. You got them as number three.
yeah, and that could always rise in the event that they do have Shaden Sharp actually play. He's a guy that graduated early, I think, at in December and enrolled in Kentucky at the semester. And he's a projected top 5 pick shooting guard.
Will he come out this year or will he stay another year?
Depends on if he's eligible or not. His camp has alleged that he's not even eligible for this year. Like he's just an Imani Bates situation. But that's not necessarily true. And everyone thinks that, I mean, they'd be foolish to not see if they can have the NBA make an exception or whatever for
So
him.
what position?
She's a 6'4" shooting guard.
Okay, okay.
But so right now Kentucky doesn't have Severe Wheeler. He's out with a concussion. He sustained that a couple of games back. So they have their freshman shooting guard Ty Washington, shooting guard combo guard. He's been playing the point guard and he's been incredibly successful in that role.
Okay.
He's bigger than Severe Wheeler. He's not as fast, but Severe Wheeler is like under 5'10", and Tata is like 6'4", 6'5", and he's equally good distributor. He just set the Kentucky record for most assists in a game. I think he had 17 assists in the game, and he had 20 points and 17 assists. So their backup point guard might be better than the starter. And so they're obviously thriving with Ty Washington and obviously Oscar Swiebe, the transfer from West Virginia, has just been all kinds of dominant.
Yes,
I mean,
he has.
He's averaging, I think, 17 points and 16 rebounds a game.
Yeah.
He's just been on a tear.
But this is my question every time I think of Kentucky. I know last year they was missing a point guard.
Yeah.
So do they have a point guard this year
They have 2.
that are good?
Severe Wheeler is 3rd in the nation in assists.
Okay.
And I mean Ty Washington has blossomed in the role as the backup point guard.
Okay.
As I just said. So
All right. Then
it's Severe Wheeler is obviously a transfer from Georgia.
wow. Well, JJ, you are number 2 team in the SEC, LSU. LSU is the most underrated school in the country.
Yeah.
Tell me about them.
Yeah, they're just fundamentally sound. They're solid. They somehow, some way finds a way to recruit. I don't know how.
You don't know how.
No clue how. I don't have any idea.
I won't make any comments on that one.
But no, Will Wade's a good coach. I do believe that he's a good coach, and however, by hook or by crook, however he gets the talent to come to Baton Rouge, he does get talent to come there.
Okay.
And I mean they lost Cam Thomas. He's with the
Yes.
Brooklyn Nets,
Yeah.
and they haven't missed a beat. They might be a better team.
Okay. Number 1, you had Auburn. Tell me about Auburn.
Well, like I said, they have the presumptive number 1 player in the country. They have the leader in blocks in the North Carolina transfer, Walker Kessler.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I think Bruce Pearl is the best coach in the conference.
JJ, let me ask you this. I'm gonna talk about the coaches, the SEC coaches. You got Pearl, you got Wade, uh, you got Kentucky, you got Barnes, Tennessee, you got Alabama. You got coaches who have a whole lot of name recognition and have the resume to back it up. Which conference has the top 5 basketball coaches? Is it the Big Ten or is it the SEC?
That's interesting because that was something that the ACC used to dominate, and the ACC I think has one team ranked in the top 25 now, so it's just a whole new world for them. So now like that there is an opening at the top spot, and the Big Ten and the SEC I think are jostling for it. The SEC before they established the SEC network, they strategized on how they were going to dominate not just football but also basketball, as it's the second biggest revenue sport, and baseball, which is a revenue sport in the South. And college baseball is very important. So like they strategized, like their strategy was to get the best coaches that they possibly can, and that will trickle down. That get the coaches that can recruit, get the coaches that that can draw eyeballs to them, and that's what SEC has done. I mean, you just listed a bunch of really amazing coaches. The Big Ten obviously,
Tom Izzo.
They do have Tom Izzo, but Juwan Howard is as great as
not seasoned yet.
Yeah, as great as the season was last year, he hasn't established himself to be a year in year out force like his predecessor was at Michigan, Beeline. Illinois, I do think their coach Brad is good, but he hasn't had a lot of postseason success to show for it. Fran McCaffrey in Iowa. He's stable, but he's not a top tier coach, I don't think. Well, okay, Matt Painter at Purdue, I think you can take him and put him up with any of the coaches in the SEC. Same thing with obviously Izzo, and Greg Gard, is having his best year at Wisconsin, although he also hasn't been as good as his predecessor was. But OSU's coach is also Chris Holtman is very underrated. He's a very good coach.
Okay.
And
You know what? I'm going to say this. For the longest, basketball was something in the South people did until football season started. It was not, that significant. But the SEC, you said they strategized. So as Big Blue IBM said, and when I say Big Blue, I don't mean Michigan or Kentucky. I mean IBM. They used to call IBM Big Blue long ago because they had to wear those blue jackets. But they had a strategy. They said, plan your work and work your plan. I guess the SEC has done that with their strategy, because we talked about their dominance in football, and if you look at their basketball to me is turning heads. I mean, they got some coaches, they got some athletes, and they got some recruits. They're using the transfer portal extremely well, extremely well. It's these other conferences, they're gonna have to plan their strategy.
even some of the worst teams in the SEC have like name recognition coaches. You have Frank Martin, who's been to a Final Four.
Yeah,
Tom Crean at Georgia, who's been to a Final Four.
Yeah.
Buzz Williams from he came from Virginia Tech by way of Marquette. He hasn't been to a Final Four, but he's taken teams to Sweet 16s at Texas A&M. They definitely, they did it for revenue purposes because they wanted to be able to stream programming, and after football, basketball does make the most money. And so they did it with purpose, and they're seeing the fruits of their.
Yeah, they are. Okay, JJ, we've gone one through 4 with the SEC. I'm gonna question Alabama and Arkansas. I can understand Arkansas, but I just I still gotta mention the Razorbacks, because who knows? But now let's go to the Big Ten. The Big Ten, Basketball is king in the Big Ten. True or false?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what I think the Big Ten is just more.
Okay, okay. Well, let's start with your 14. You want to start at the top? You want to start at number 4?
Um, we'll go whatever way you want to go.
Let's go Wisconsin.
Okay.
Wisconsin, you picked number 4 right now. Wisconsin's always been a solid team. Always solid. They made it to some Final Fours a few years back. They've never been, in my mind, like that superstar athlete. They had some really good athletes, some star athletes, but they haven't had that number 1 pick type superstar athlete. What's your take on Wisconsin? Their potential this year?
Well, right now they do have a guy, Jordan Davis, who a lot of people didn't even think about whatsoever on preseason All-American teams, preseason top 100 lists. And he's now thought of, as a top 5, top 10 pick in the NBA lottery. So,
Okay.
he's expected to go high as anyone from Wisconsin since, the days when Wisconsin made it to the title game with Sam Decker and Frank Kaminsky.
Yep.
He's supposed to go like that high. So Wisconsin, they have like a dynamic, do-it-all player. I think he leads them in. I know he definitely leads them in points, rebounds, and assists. Well, definitely points and rebounds. I think it's also like assists and steals. But they also have a consistent, reliable, steady hand back in Brad Davidson, who did come back for his 6th year.
Okay.
Wisconsin had a bunch of 5th-year seniors last year, and they lost a lot of them, like Trice, Dimitri
I
Trice
remember
is
him.
gone.
Ex-Michigan State.
And like their big man, he was a senior, he's gone. They had a lot of turnover, but again, still Greg Gard's having they're 14-2, which is the best start that Wisconsin's had under Greg Gard.
Okay.
Ever since Bill Ryan left. So, I think that they have like a guy that you have to account for and a guy that can take over the game in close situations for the first time in a long while since like Orlando Tucker, Sam Decker those days. So I think
So they're a legitimate threat this year.
absolutely.
Talk to me, JJ, about your number 3 team, Illinois. Now, Illinois is a team that I like their big man. I like Illinois. They started out slowly, but they have definitely improved. Talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd forgotten about them just because I was going to check back in more with them when their point guard got healthy. But the point guard has been out. I can't pronounce his last name. But he's been out for more than 6 weeks, and I thought it was COVID related initially. Apparently, it's a concussion. He's just been out for that long for a concussion. But Trent Frazier has been balling like crazy in his stead, and Kofi Coburn, after a slow start, is looking like his old dominant. So, I mean, they're obviously missing the point guard in Ayu Dosunmu, who left for the draft, and is now with the Bulls. But and if he does come back, that lets everyone else. That makes Trent Frazier just a scorer. It frees everyone up to go back to their natural positions and the natural hierarchy of things. So I think they could be like a national title contender. The Big Ten hasn't won a championship since 2000.
Well, we got 2 more teams to talk about before we get out of here. Talk about your number 2 team, those Spartans in East Lands.
They're just very, very, very solid. They're solid offensively, solid defensively. Max Christie was in a slump shooting, pretty poorly for a while.
He's a freshman.
But his defense has always traveled. And his defensive IQ for a freshman is just off the charts. Like, the way I watched him, make a contest. It was just like a textbook contest. Like, he was aware of, the vertical. He needed to be vertical so he didn't, land in the guy's cylinder and come down and turn to a foul. He was so aware. It was very uncanny. And then there was another point in time where Minnesota came down and they had a 2-on-1 in the corner, and he occupied the very right space. He's never out of position. He occupied the exact space that you need to contain 2 offensive players. He guarded the area so perfectly. I mean, his wingspan.
Who's their go-to man? And with 2 seconds to go in the game and you got the ball, who's going to take that shot for Michigan State?
Well, I mean, I would go with Max Christie. I mean, the best iteration of their team should be him. He's 6'6" and he has the highest release point of anyone I've
You
seen.
would go with him over Gabe Brown?
I would go with Max Christie. He's better. I absolutely would.
Okay. Right now, maybe later in the season, I would tend to agree with you. Right now, I think I would have to go with Gabriel. But go ahead.
It depends on what you need. Like Tyson Walker he's not consistent, but he has the ability to get by his. He's very slippery. He can be, and he has the ability to get by his man and finish, um, as well.
Okay, Jay, I want to talk really quickly about Michigan State. Michigan State, they've only lost 2 games this year. They're undefeated in the Big Ten. They have not played an upper level Big Ten team yet. But I want to talk about their 2 losses. Their 2 losses are to Big 12 teams. They lost to Baylor
Yeah.
and to Kansas.
Yes.
Kansas, first game of the season. Uh, are they going to continue this pace? I mean, when they start playing these upper echelon teams, do you expect Michigan State to produce the way they've been producing?
Yeah, if they were to play Kansas again, I like that matchup really well. Actually, I do think that you can see like the progress. Like I've been to a bunch of Michigan State games, and you can see like their progress on offensively and defensively.
Okay.
Gabe Brown moves his feet so much better. Like there was a lot of times earlier in the year, like his man would get by him, and he would be out of position, and he would have to like try to get the trail block. But now he just opens up his hips more, and he's just in a much better position. He doesn't get taken advantage of. Like he doesn't get driven by. I think you could see the progress of their team defensively. I mean, Jaden Akins he's always moving. He's always in motion. He seems to be like in the right spot as well, like as a freshman.
Okay. JJ, let's talk about the #1 team in the Big Ten in your mind. Those Boilermakers in West Lafayette, Purdue. What makes them #1?
I think they have the best coach in the conference, and Matt Painter. And,
Better than Tom Izzo.
I think they have the best coach in the conference.
Go ahead.
I think I mean they have the best. I think I believe they still have the best offense in the country. I think they have the #1 offense in the country. Now, conversely, I think last time I looked, they had the 77th best defense in the country, so they don't seem to be as balanced as you'd prefer. But they have Travion Williams out of Grand Rapids, Zach Edey, the 7'2", 7'4", somewhere in that mix. Center, that could be a potential Big Ten Player of the Year. Jaden Ivey, the sophomore who's, a surefire lottery pick. I mean, they have pieces that Purdue doesn't always have, and they have a good coach. And I just think that once they get their defense in order.
How did Purdue lose those 2 Big Ten teams, 2 Big Ten games? I was really blown away by those losses. Because I thought Purdue was just going to roll in the Big Ten. I really did. And then they come out, they lost 2 of their first 3 games. How did that happen?
I mean, Rutgers was at home. I mean, it was early in the year. Those things happen.
Okay. So I shouldn't fret. Purdue is going to roll through the Big Ten.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan State, they all could.
Before we close, JJ, we're going to get ready to close. Michigan. In my mind, Michigan may be the most disappointing team in the country this year. Will they right the ship before the season is over?
I don't know. They have issues at point guard. They have issues at point guard. Caleb Houston. They have 2 5-star freshmen, and Houston has really not been performing that well. But I mean, you can tell that they miss Shawnee Brown, who's now in a rotation player in the NBA. You can tell they miss Franz Wagner, who now leads the NBA rookies in scoring, and you can tell they miss Isaiah Livers.
Yeah.
Hunter Dickinson has been good. He has been as advertised. He's been as good as he was, but he can't carry the team by himself. They don't have Mike Smith. He was a steady hand at the point guard. He's obviously been missed, and the transfer point guard that they picked up has been underwhelming.
Well, JJ, now that football season is over, our next few broadcasts, we're going to focus more on basketball, and we're going to break it down. Anything you want to say before we get out of here?
I will just say that the Cincinnati Bengals will win the Super Bowl, and other than that, I have nothing else to add.
Okay, and Arkansas Razorbacks will be the national champion football team next year. And with that, we'll say WPS, Whoopig Suey. We out of here.
Who dat?
All right.